Today, let us talk about the movie titled The Odyssey by Christopher Nolan. This is a story that has been around for close to 3,000 years, and somehow it still feels like it has something to say. Nolan didn't just dust off an old poem and put it on screen, he built a full world out of it, gods and monsters, and grieving kings. The cast is stacked with people that you'd never expect to see standing next to each other in the same movie. Before we go person by person, it helps to know what the film is actually chasing underneath all the spectacle. It is a story about a man trying to get home, sure, but it's also about what home even means after 20 years away. All the people he left behind had changed, the same way he too had changed. That gap between who you were and who you have become is really what the whole thing hangs on. Matt Damon plays Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, the guy who came up with the whole wooden horse idea and then spent the next decade paying for it. He is clever more than he is strong, and that's really the engine of the character. He talks his way out of things that other heroes would just fight their way through. Damon apparently dropped a lot of weight for this role and grew his beard out for a full year because Nolan wanted it real, not glued on. This is his third film with Nolan, after Interstellar and Oppenheimer, but the first time he's actually carried one as the lead. You can feel that weight in how tired he plays the character by the film's later stretch. Then there is Telemachus, Odysseus' son, played by Holland. He was just a baby when his father left for Troy, so by the time we meet him, he's a young man trying to hold his mother's household together while a pack of suitors slowly take it over. Half the movie is him growing into someone who might actually be ready to be king, whether his father makes it back or not. Holland plays the role of Telemachus with this restless, searching energy, like he can't sit still until he has real answers. His storyline runs on its own track for most of the film, separate from his father's journey, and the two of them don't actually cross paths again until near the end. Given that Holland and Zendaya are together in real life, it's a bit funny that their characters barely interact here. Speaking of Zendaya, she plays Athena, goddess of wisdom, and Nolan handles the gods in an interesting way. Instead of big glowing entrances, they show up as a shift in the light, a sudden gust of wind, something you'd almost miss if you were not paying attention. Zendaya barely raises her voice through the whole film, but somehow every line she has still carries weight. Her Athena sticks close to Odysseus specifically, guiding him through one impossible situation after another. She is less of a flashy presence and more like a quiet thread running underneath everything, always there even when you forget to look for her. Back in Ithaca, we've got Anne Hathaway as Penelope, Odysseus' wife. She spent years fending off suitors by telling them she will remarry once she finishes weaving a burial shroud, then secretly undoing her work every night so it never gets done. Hathaway plays her calm on the surface, but there is a stubbornness underneath that surface that never lets up. What is interesting is how much more agency this version of Penelope gets compared to the original poem. She is not just waiting around, she is actively teaching her son how to lead and quietly outmaneuvering the men circling her home. There is a small detail, a ring she keeps twisting whenever a suitor gets too close, that never gets explained in dialogue but tells you everything you need to know about how she is holding herself together. The main threat in that home is Antinous, played by Robert Pattinson. He is the loudest and cruelest of the suitors, the one who's already started acting like he owns the palace before anyone has even declared Odysseus dead. Pattinson plays the role with a smug confidence that makes every scene feel a little dangerous. He has worked with Nolan before, on Tenet, but this role leans a lot more physical and menacing. In the original story, Antinous is the first suitor to die once Odysseus finally returns, and the film doesn't soften that outcome one bit. Now away from Ithaca, Odysseus runs into two very different women during his years at sea, and it is worth separating them because people mix them up. Charlize Theron plays Calypso, who traps him on her island for 7 years, offering him comfort and immortality if he'll just stay. Theron doesn't play her as a villain exactly. She plays her as someone deeply lonely, whose love turns into something closer to a cage without her even realizing it. The other one is Circe, played by Samantha Morton, the witch who turns part of his crew into pigs. Morton brings this eerie stillness to the role, less a monster and more a woman who's learned to be feared because it's safer than being hurt again. Her island is one of the stranger, sadder stops in the whole journey. There is also a pretty striking piece of casting with Lupita Nyong'o, who actually plays two roles, Helen of Troy and her sister Clytemnestra. Nolan makes them twins in this version, which is a change from the mythology, where they're usually treated as half-sisters. Helen shows up mostly in flashback, tied to the memories of the war she's blamed for starting. Clytemnestra barely appears on screen, but her presence looms over her husband Agamemnon the entire film, hinting at what's waiting for him once he gets home. Nyong'o gives each sister a completely different weight to carry, one shaped by beauty and blame, the other by grief that is slowly turning into something darker. That husband, Agamemnon, is played by Benny Safdie. He commanded the Greek army at Troy, and the film paints him as a man already hollowed out by guilt long before anything happens to him. Safdie also appeared in Oppenheimer, and here he plays Agamemnon almost like a warning sign, a version of what Odysseus could become if he loses sight of who's waiting for him. His brother Menelaus, king of Sparta, is played by Jon Bernthal. Telemachus visits him early on, looking for any news of his father, and Bernthal plays the scene with a rough, worn-down warmth. He tells old war stories that end up revealing more about his own grief over losing Helen than they do about Odysseus. Back on the ship, Himesh Patel plays Eurylochus, Odysseus's second-in-command and the crew's voice of doubt. He is loyal but scared, constantly questioning decisions even as he follows through with them. His worst moment comes when he talks the starving crew into killing a sacred cattle they were warned never to touch, a decision that ends up costing them everything. One of the more surprising names in the cast is Elliot Page, who plays a character called Sinon. A lot of people assumed going in that Elliot might play Achilles, so this was a genuine curveball. In this version, Sinon was a boy forced into the war under Odysseus's command. Antinous swapped places with him to dodge the fighting altogether, then spent years rewriting the story to make himself sound brave. Later on, Odysseus actually borrows the name Sinon as a disguise once he's back in Ithaca, which adds a nice layer to a film that's already asking a lot of questions about who gets to tell their own story. Back home, John Leguizamo plays Eumaeus, the loyal swineherd who never stopped believing Odysseus was still alive. He is nearly blind but sharp as ever, and he ends up being something like a father figure to Telemachus while everyone else has given up hope. When Odysseus finally comes home in disguise, it's Eumaeus who welcomes him without knowing who he really is, and that scene lands harder than you'd expect from a side character. Then there is the film's most physically demanding piece of casting, Bill Irwin as Polyphemus, the one-eyed giant. That cave sequence is apparently the scariest stretch of the whole movie. Irwin brings the creature to life through a mix of performance capture and practical work. It is a strange bit of trivia that this is the same actor who played Tars in Interstellar, and also happens to be Mr. Noodle from Sesame Street. Rounding out the palace intrigue, Corey Hawkins plays Polybus, one of the suitors following Antinous' lead, and Mia Goth plays Melantho, a maidservant whose betrayal ends up exposing Penelope's weaving trick to the suitors. Logan Marshall Green plays Melanthius, Melantho's twin brother, another servant who's picked the wrong side and mocks Odysseus while he's still in disguise, not realizing exactly who he's talking to. There is also James Remar as Tiresias, the blind prophet that Odysseus visits in the underworld. Remar, who also showed up in Oppenheimer, plays the role with a grave, unshakable calm, laying out everything that's still ahead, the cattle, the suitors, the long road still waiting even after Ithaca is reclaimed. And then, in one of the stranger choices, Travis Scott opens and closes the film as a traveling bard who is singing this whole story into being. It is his acting debut, and Nolan uses him to connect old-school oral storytelling with something a lot more modern, giving the film this feeling of being passed down and retold over and over, the way stories like this actually survive. There is a wider crew of shipmates too, filled out by actors like Will Yun Lee, Jimmy Gonzalez, Andrew Howard, Elise Gable, and Ryan Hurst, all playing men who follow Odysseus into one disaster after another. They are not the headline names, but they're what make the journey feel like it actually costs something, since not all of them make it home. So that is the roster, a king trying to get back to people who have changed just as much as he has. A son growing into someone worth waiting for. A wife who's been quietly outsmarting everyone the whole time. Gods who show up as nothing more than a breeze or a flicker of light. and a whole line of side characters who each carry their own little piece of the same question this story's been asking since it was first told out loud around a fire. What does it actually mean to come home? And is the person waiting for you still going to recognize who you've become?